Jackson, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for being here. Mayor Pasquale from Akron, thanks for driving that around from Akron to Cleveland. We appreciate it. In Cleveland Heights, or Cleveland, local late 93 president, firefighters Chester Ashman, 3rd District Commander Calvin Williams, and thank you for joining us from Policy Matters, Ohio. We're also joined today by Justin Hahn, who is a teacher at Lincoln West, has received his layoff notice with 16 other teachers there. He's a history teacher, 9 through 12, he's taught for 8 years. Also, many more teachers throughout the Cleveland School District have been given layoff notices. That's what we have that to deal with too, and need to fight to keep as many teachers in the classroom as possible. It's a terrible idea to lay off teachers when we're facing the problems in the future for our children. No other reason than that. As classrooms get bigger, it gets harder for those teachers that are still there to teach. We're also facing the prospect of a couple hundred bus drivers have been laid off already. We're working with the transit union and others on some other legislation, not the purpose of the news conference today, but other legislation on helping free some capital money for operating so that people that need to get to work, the people that need to go to the doctor can get there. And many of our citizens in this great city and suburbs around Cleveland without public transit can't do what they need to do in their lives for their health care, for their employment, for all of that. Let me take us back when I see people who are unhappy with the economic policy that we have been pursuing, trying to put firefighters back to work, trying to keep police officers on the beat, trying to help with city services to serve the public in Cleveland or in Garfield Heights or in Asheville or anywhere else. And I want to take the calendar back to January 2009, the year that President Obama took office with the Democratic House and the Democratic Senate. We know that year, in that month alone, 700,000 people in January of 2009 lost jobs in this country. We saw we were in a terrible economic spiral when President Obama took office. We passed the Recovery Act in February 2009. The job losses slowed in Ohio. Now, a year and a few months later, we've added more than 100,000 jobs. In the first 4 months of this year, we were losing 700,000 jobs a month when President Obama took office. We lost more jobs than that month after month for his economic policies. Our economic policies kicked in. Now we're seeing job growth. Ohio, the state of Ohio, had more jobs created than any state in the country in the month of April. Obviously, everybody knows until everybody has work, and that means that the police and firefighters standing behind me, and EMS, and city workers, and private sector, and Hugo Boss, and all the companies that are represented here, until they have job security, until they find work, we obviously don't have a recovery. But we do know, and listen to this fact, the economy produces jobs over the next 7 months at the same pace it did in the first 4 months. We have created more jobs in 2010 than in the entire 8 years of the George Bush administration. Let me say that again. The economy continues to produce jobs in the next 7 months. It's not enough. I'm not arguing that. We've got to do better. If we can continue to produce jobs in the next 7 months at the rate we have the last 4, it's more jobs that were created during the entire 8 years of the Bush administration. Wendy Patton will talk in a few minutes about Policy Matter Ohio's report that shows our region is facing elimination of critical public services at a time when we simply cannot afford that. The National League of Cities said last week 7 in 10 city managers and mayors are cutting jobs and services because of the loss of property and property tax, especially in commercial real estate. But you don't need me to recite these statistics. You know them because you live them every day. You're seeing people still that can't find work when they're trying to. That's why what you need from me and from Mayor Pasquale and from Mayor Jackson is to take action. That's why I will introduce next week when I return to Washington the Local Jobs for America Act. It would help cities and municipalities save and create jobs. even as they face these awful budget crises. This legislation is aimed at putting people back to work and turning them into taxpayers rather than benefit collectors. The bill would direct $75 billion over the next 2 years to cities, towns, and counties to save municipal jobs to prevent layoffs, so that our cities, our communities, our counties are protected. Firefighters, emergency medical personnel, law enforcement, all the services that are essential in a civilized society to a normal, decent life. That means our mayors and municipalities, if we can pass this bill, will be empowered to use federal funds to save jobs in this community, in all communities. It gives mayors the funds to save a firefighter's job, a police officer's career, or a teacher's livelihood. And let me be clear, we're finding the best way to pay for job-creating legislation like the Local Jobs for America Act. Now let me talk before closing and before bringing on Chester Ashton. Let me talk for a moment about people who oppose this legislation. It's suddenly fashionable in Washington to ring the alarm when it comes to the national deficit. All of us are concerned about the deficit, but the people that rang the alarms about the national deficit since President Obama took office, and they rang that alarm starting in January 21st, 2009. But the people that rang that alarm didn't ring that alarm when the Iraq War began. We began to spend billions of dollars a month not paid for. They didn't ring the alarm when Congress passed earlier in the decade tax cuts for the richest Americans and didn't pay for them. They didn't ring the budget alarm talking about a budget deficit and debt for our children and grandchildren, a very real issue. They didn't ring that budget alarm when Congress, in the name of Medicare privatization, did the huge tax dollar giveaway to the drug companies and the insurance companies and didn't pay for it. They weren't concerned about the deficit then. They're now concerned about the deficit when we are spending money, but we're spending money to keep firefighters in their jobs. We're spending money to keep teachers in the classroom. We're spending money to keep cops on the beat. We're spending money to provide the services and to stimulate the economy. And if we hadn't done that in the last year, we would be in a much, much worse position than Mayor Musquelic and Mayor Jackson and all of us would be facing for our country. That's why this group that sounds this alarm, understand they started a year ago, or 5, 7, or 8 years ago when they ran up these huge deficits. They started the fire. They're now calling the fire department, yet they don't want to give the firefighters the resources they need to keep us safe and to keep our communities running. Let me be clear, if we don't save and create jobs, our economy will be in a deeper hole and our communities will be less safe and we will have even bigger budget deficits than our children are inheriting. Thank you for your advocacy. Let's remember we're all in this fight together.